Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for over 13 years, guiding thousands of families through moments of joy, laughter, and occasional tears. He prided himself on keeping the show's energy upbeat, on making families feel comfortable, and on handling emotional moments with grace and humor when needed. But on a crisp October afternoon in 2024, a 17-year-old boy named Tyler Bennett was about to share a promise so profound, so heartbreaking, and so beautiful that it would strip away every bit of Steve's professional composure and leave him completely speechless. What started as a routine question about why Tyler's mother wasn't there would become one of the most emotionally devastating and inspiring moments in television history, a testament to a son's love, a mother's final wishes, and the promises we keep even when keeping them breaks our hearts. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these moments that remind us what unconditional love really means. The Bennett family stood on the Family Feud stage with a mixture of excitement and visible nervousness. There was Tyler Bennett, just 17 years old, tall and thin with dark hair that kept falling into his eyes, which he would push back with a habitual gesture that suggested anxiety. Beside him stood his father, Robert Bennett, age 43, whose smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Tyler's two younger sisters, Emma who was 14 and Lily who was 11, completed the family along with Robert's brother, Uncle James. They were competing against the Martinez family from Texas, and while everyone was trying to maintain the cheerful energy that Family Feud required, there was an undercurrent of sadness that permeated the Bennett family's presence. Tyler kept his hands in his pockets most of the time, and when he did take them out, his fingers would unconsciously move to touch a small silver locket that hung around his neck, tucked mostly under his shirt. His sisters stayed close to him, Emma occasionally reaching out to touch his arm, and young Lily holding onto her father's hand with a grip that seemed too tight for a casual game show appearance. The game had been progressing normally enough. The Bennett family was holding their own against the Martinez family, and Steve Harvey was doing his usual masterful job of keeping things light and entertaining. But Steve, with his years of experience reading people, could sense something heavy hanging over the Bennett family. There was grief here, recent and raw, barely concealed beneath the smiles they were trying to maintain. During a break between rounds, Steve did what he often did when he sensed a family had a story. He walked over to the Bennetts with his microphone, ready to engage in some friendly banter that would give the audience a chance to connect with them. But as he got closer, he could see that Tyler's eyes were red-rimmed, like he had been crying recently or was fighting hard not to cry now. "Bennett family from Portland, Oregon," Steve said warmly. "Y'all are doing great out here. Now, I gotta ask, I notice it's Dad, Uncle James, and 3 kids. Where's Mom? She didn't want to come out here and show y'all up." It was his standard joke, the same kind he made on dozens of episodes. He expected a laugh, maybe a funny story about why Mom couldn't make it. Instead, the entire Bennett family went completely still. Tyler's hand immediately went to that locket around his neck, gripping it tightly. Emma and Lily both started crying immediately, not dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that spoke of a grief so deep they couldn't control it even in this public moment. Robert Bennett's face crumpled for just a second before he tried to compose himself. Uncle James put a supportive hand on his brother's shoulder, and Tyler, this 17-year-old boy, took a shaky breath and looked directly at Steve Harvey with eyes that held far too much pain for someone so young. Steve's smile faded instantly. He had seen enough pain in his life to recognize it immediately. "I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice dropping to that gentle tone he reserved for serious moments. "Something happened." Tyler nodded, his throat working as he tried to find words. His father started to speak, clearly wanting to protect his son from having to say it, but Tyler shook his head and stepped forward slightly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady, the voice of someone who had learned to function while carrying unbearable weight. "Mr. Harvey, my mom died 7 months ago. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. From diagnosis to death was only 4 months." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey, this man who always had words, who could riff on anything, who never missed a beat, just stood there frozen. His face showed a progression of emotions: shock, sorrow, compassion, and something that looked like he was bracing himself because he knew there was more to this story. "Oh God, son, I am so sorry," Steve managed to say, his voice already thick with emotion. 7 months. You're still in the thick of it, aren't you? Tyler nodded, tears now streaming down his face, though he was clearly trying to hold it together. "Yes, sir. Every day is still really hard. Some days I wake up and forget for just a second, and then I remember and it's like she died all over again." Steve's eyes were glistening now. "Tyler, I am so deeply sorry for your loss. How old was your mom?" 41. Robert answered, his voice breaking. "My wife Sarah was only 41 years old. We thought we had decades left. We had plans. We were going to travel when the kids were grown. We were going to grow old together. And then a doctor said pancreatic cancer, and 4 months later I was burying my wife and trying to figure out how to raise 3 kids alone." Emma, the 14-year-old, spoke up through her tears. "Mom was the best mom. She never missed our school events. She knew all our friends' names. She made us feel like we were the most important people in the world, and then she got sick so fast. 1 month she was at my volleyball game cheering for me, and 3 months later she couldn't get out of bed." Lily, the youngest at 11, added in a small voice. I don't remember what her voice sounds like anymore. "It's only been 7 months and I'm already forgetting." The entire studio was crying now. The audience, the crew, the other family, everyone was devastated by what they were hearing. But Steve sensed there was something more, something specific about Tyler and why he kept touching that locket, why this 17-year-old seemed to be carrying something even heavier than grief. "Tyler," Steve said gently, "you keep touching that necklace. Is that from your mother?" Tyler nodded, pulling the locket out from under his shirt. His hands were shaking as he opened it. Inside was a tiny picture of a woman with kind eyes and a bright smile, clearly taken during happier times. "This was my mom's locket. She wore it every day." Inside was a picture of me, Emma, and Lily from when we were little. Right before she died, she took that picture out and put in this picture of just her. She said she wanted me to have it, to keep her close. Steve's voice was barely a whisper. "Why you specifically, Tyler? Not your sisters?" Tyler's face crumpled and fresh sobs broke through his attempts at composure. "Because I'm the oldest. Because she gave me a job to do. Because she made me promise something, and I've been trying so hard to keep that promise, Mr. Harvey, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done." Steve took a step closer, his full attention on this boy who was clearly carrying the weight of the world. "What did she make you promise, son?" Tyler wiped his eyes roughly, trying to get control of his emotions. When he spoke, his words came out in a rush, like they had been building up inside him for 7 months, and finally had somewhere to go. 3 days before my mom died, she was in hospice at our house. She was lucid, which hadn't been happening much anymore because of the pain medication. She called me into her room alone. My dad and sisters were downstairs. She took my hand and she looked at me with these eyes, Mr. Harvey, these eyes that were so scared and so sad, and she said, "Tyler, I need you to promise me something." The studio was absolutely silent, except for the sound of Tyler's voice and the quiet crying of people in the audience. Steve Harvey stood completely still, tears running down his face, hanging on every word. She said, "I need you to promise me that you'll take care of your sisters and your father. I need you to promise me that you won't let this family fall apart without me. I need you to promise me that you'll make sure Emma and Lily know how much I love them, that you'll be there for them when they need someone to talk to about me, that you'll help them remember the good times and not just the sadness. And I need you to promise me that you'll watch over your father because he's going to be lost without me, and I need to know someone is making sure he's okay." Tyler's voice broke completely. And then she said, "I know it's not fair to ask this of you. You're only 17. You should be thinking about college and girls and your future, not about being a substitute parent to your sisters and a caretaker to your father. But Tyler, you're the strongest person I know, and I need you to be strong for them when I can't be anymore. Can you promise me that?" Steve Harvey's hand was over his mouth, his whole body shaking with silent sobs. Tyler continued, the words pouring out now like a dam had broken. And what was I supposed to say, Mr. Harvey? She was my mom and she was dying, and she was scared about what would happen to our family without her. So I promised. I looked her in the eyes and I said, I promise, Mom. I'll take care of everyone. I won't let our family fall apart. And she smiled at me, this tiny sad smile, and she said, that's my boy. You've always been my brave boy. Tyler was openly sobbing now. 3 days later she was gone. And Mr. Harvey, I've been trying so hard to keep that promise. I get up every morning and I make breakfast for my sisters before school. I help Lily with her homework because Dad works late and he's so exhausted all the time. I go to all of Emma's volleyball games because Mom would have gone. I check on my dad to make sure he's eating, to make sure he's not just sitting in their room staring at her pictures. He continued through his tears. But I'm 17! I don't know how to do this! I don't know how to help my little sister when she cries for Mom in the middle of the night. I don't know what to say to Emma when she's angry about everything because she doesn't know how to process her grief. I don't know how to make my dad want to live again when I can see he's just going through the motions. I promised my mom I would hold our family together, but I'm breaking apart myself and I don't know how to keep my promise. Steve Harvey walked over to Tyler and pulled him into a tight embrace. This man who was supposed to be hosting a game show, who was supposed to be keeping things light and entertaining, just held this grieving teenage boy and let him cry. The audience was devastated. Many people were openly weeping. The production crew had tears streaming down their faces. Even the Martinez family, the family they were competing against, had abandoned their side of the stage to gather around the Bennetts in support. When Tyler's sobs finally subsided a bit, Steve held him by the shoulders and looked directly into his eyes. For several long moments, Steve couldn't speak. He opened his mouth multiple times, but no words came out. He was completely at a loss, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what this child had been carrying alone. Finally, Steve found his voice, though it was rough with emotion. Tyler, I need you to hear something, and I need you to really listen. Are you listening to me? Tyler nodded, wiping his eyes. Your mother made you that promise because she loved you and she was scared and she was dying. She wasn't thinking clearly about what she was asking of you, because parents who are dying aren't thinking about what's fair. They're just thinking about their babies and trying to protect them, even when they can't be there anymore. Steve's voice grew stronger. But son, your mother didn't intend for you to destroy yourself trying to hold everyone else together. She didn't want you to stop being a 17-year-old kid. She didn't want you to sacrifice your own grief and your own healing to take care of everyone else. You cannot pour from an empty cup, Tyler. You cannot take care of your family if you're falling apart inside. He turned to Robert Bennett. Dad, did you know about this promise? Robert shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, Sarah and I talked about so many things before she died, but I didn't know she had put this on Tyler. Son. He looked at Tyler. I am so sorry. You've been carrying this alone. Tyler nodded. I didn't want to burden you, Dad. You were already dealing with so much. And I promised Mom. I gave her my word. Steve stepped back, looking at the entire family. Here's what's going to happen. This family is going to win this game right now. I don't care about the score. You've already won because you're here, because you're together, because 7 months after the worst thing that could happen to a family, you're still fighting to stay connected. That's what your mother wanted, Tyler, not for you to destroy yourself, but for this family to stay together. And you are together. He turned to the producers. Stop the cameras. This family needs a moment, and we're going to give it to them. But then he stopped and looked back at Tyler. Actually, no. Keep rolling. Because millions of people are dealing with grief right now. Millions of families are trying to figure out how to survive after losing someone they love. And they need to see this. They need to know they're not alone. Steve addressed the camera directly, his face raw with emotion. If you're watching this, and you've lost someone you love, if you're trying to figure out how to keep going, if you're a kid who's trying to be strong for your family while you're breaking inside, I need you to hear this. Grief is not something you're supposed to do alone. Promises made at deathbeds are sacred, but they're not meant to destroy the people left behind. Tyler's mother didn't want him to stop living his life. She wanted him to help his family remember love, not to sacrifice himself on the altar of her memory. He turned back to Tyler. You want to know how to keep your promise to your mother? Stop trying to be everyone's savior and start being a family that heals together. Let your dad be the dad. Let your sisters grieve in their own way. And Tyler, let yourself be 17. Let yourself hurt. Let yourself need help. That's not breaking your promise. That's honoring it, because your mother loved you too much to want this for you. Robert Bennett walked over to his son and wrapped him in his arms. Tyler, I have been so lost in my own grief that I didn't see I was losing you too. I didn't see that you were carrying all of us. That ends today. I'm your father, and it's my job to hold this family together, not yours. You get to be my son, not my partner in parenting your sisters. Emma and Lily rushed over, wrapping their arms around their father and brother. We miss Mom, Emma said, but we need you too, Tyler. We need our brother, not another parent. We need you to be okay. Lily looked up at her big brother. Tyler, Mom wouldn't want you to be so sad trying to make us happy. She would want us to be sad together and then happy together. Uncle James, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I've been watching Tyler carry this burden for 7 months. I tried to help, but he wouldn't let me because of this promise. Sarah was my sister-in-law, and I loved her. But she would be devastated if she could see what her last request did to her son. She would want to take it back. Steve nodded. Exactly. Parents who are dying say things they wouldn't say if they knew they had more time. They make requests that come from fear and love, but they don't always think through the consequences. Your mother loved you, Tyler, and part of honoring that love is recognizing that she would want you to have your own life, your own grief process, your own healing journey. Tyler was crying again, but this time it seemed different, like something was releasing, some pressure valve that had been building for 7 months. I've been so scared that if I let myself fall apart, if I stop being strong, that everyone else will fall apart too. I've been scared that our family would disintegrate without Mom, and it would be my fault for not keeping my promise. That's not how families work, son, Steve said gently. Families don't stay together because one person holds them up. Families stay together because everyone supports each other. You've been trying to be the foundation, but foundations need support too. You need to let your family hold you up sometimes. Robert spoke, his voice firm despite his tears. Tyler, I'm making you a new promise right now. I promise that I'm going to be your father, not someone you have to take care of. I promise I'm going to make sure you get to be a teenager, to think about college, to have fun with your friends, to grieve when you need to grieve. I promise that your sisters and I are going to support you the way you've been trying to support us. And I promise that we're going to do this together, as a family, the way your mother would have wanted if she had been thinking clearly. Steve wiped his eyes and looked at the audience, many of whom were still crying. This is what real love looks like, y'all. It's not perfect. It's messy. It's complicated. It's a 17-year-old boy trying to keep an impossible promise because he loved his mother. It's a father realizing he almost lost his son to grief. It's sisters who need their brother to just be their brother. It's a family figuring out how to survive the worst thing that ever happened to them. He turned to Tyler one more time. Your mother is proud of you. I know that with everything in me. She's proud that you tried to keep your promise. She's proud of the man you're becoming. But son, she would be even more proud if you let yourself heal, if you let yourself be helped, if you understand that keeping her memory alive doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Tyler nodded, something shifting in his expression. I think I understand. It's just hard to let go of something she asked me to do right before she died. You're not letting go, Steve corrected. You're reinterpreting. You're understanding what she really meant, which was love each other and stay together as a family. That's what she wanted, and you can do that without destroying yourself in the process. The show took a break, but the conversation continued off camera. Steve sat with the Bennett family for over an hour, talking about grief, about healing, about how to honor someone's memory without being imprisoned by it. He shared his own experiences with loss, his own struggles with promises he had made to people who had died. The production team, moved by what they had witnessed, reached out to grief counselors and arranged for the Bennett family to receive free therapy, both individual and family counseling, for as long as they needed it. Steve's foundation also set up a fund to help with Tyler's college expenses, ensuring that this young man, who had tried to sacrifice his future for his family's present, would still have the opportunities his mother had wanted for him. When the episode aired 3 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The show received over 100,000 messages in the first 48 hours, most of them from people sharing their own stories of grief, of deathbed promises, of trying to hold families together after devastating loss. Therapists reached out offering their services. Support groups formed online for people dealing with similar situations. And most importantly, thousands of people wrote to say that watching Tyler share his burden had given them permission to share their own. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a woman whose husband had died 2 years earlier, leaving her with 3 children. My oldest son, who was 16 when his father died, made him a similar promise. I didn't know about it until I watched your show with my son. When Tyler talked about trying to hold everyone together, my son broke down and told me about the promise he had made to his father. We've been going through the motions for 2 years, both of us trying to be strong for each other, neither of us really healing. Your show saved my relationship with my son. Thank you for having the courage to share your pain, Tyler. 6 months after the episode aired, Family Feud did a follow-up with the Bennett family. The change was remarkable. Tyler looked lighter, younger somehow, like a weight had been lifted. He was preparing for college, had reconnected with friends he had been neglecting, and was seeing a therapist regularly to work through his grief and the guilt he felt about the promise. I still wear my mom's locket every day, Tyler told Steve during the follow-up, and I still think about that promise. But now I understand what she really wanted. She wanted us to love each other and support each other. And we're doing that. Dad's been incredible. He's really stepped up. My sisters and I are closer than ever. We talk about Mom all the time, the good memories, the funny stories. We're keeping her alive in the way she would have wanted, not by making one person responsible for everyone else's happiness, but by being a family. Robert Bennett added, losing Sarah was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But I almost lost Tyler too because I was so absorbed in my own grief that I didn't see he was drowning. That episode of Family Feud, as painful as it was, saved my son. It made us all realize that we needed to be honest about how much we were struggling instead of trying to be strong for each other all the time. Emma and Lily both spoke about how therapy had helped them process their grief and their guilt about not being able to help their mother. They talked about how having Tyler back as their brother, instead of trying to be a parent replacement, had helped their family feel more normal. Steve Harvey, reflecting on the episode in interviews, often cited it as one of the most important moments of his career. People think television is about entertainment, he said, and most of the time it is. But sometimes, if you're willing to let real life in, if you're willing to go to the painful places instead of glossing over them, television can be healing. Tyler's story healed him by letting him finally share the weight he was carrying, and it healed thousands of other people who saw themselves in his struggle. 3 years after that October afternoon, Tyler graduated high school as valedictorian. In his speech, he talked about his mother and the promise he had made to her. My mother asked me to take care of our family, he told his graduating class. And I tried to do that by being everything to everyone. But what I learned is that taking care of people doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means creating space for everyone to heal, to grieve, to grow. It means being honest about struggles instead of pretending to be strong. It means accepting help instead of always trying to be the helper. He continued, my mother's last gift to me wasn't that promise. It was the love behind the promise. She loved us so much that even facing death, she was worried about us. And the best way I can honor that love is by living a life she would be proud of, which means taking care of myself so I can be there for others, not destroying myself to hold everyone else up. Tyler went on to college, majoring in psychology with a focus on grief counseling. His experience had given him insight into the struggles of people dealing with loss, and he wanted to help others navigate the complicated terrain of grief without feeling like they had to be perfect or strong all the time. The Bennett family continued to heal, never forgetting Sarah, but learning to incorporate her memory into their lives in healthy ways rather than letting grief consume them. They established a small scholarship in her name for students who had lost a parent, wanting to help other kids who might be struggling the way Tyler had struggled. 5 years after the episode, on the anniversary of Sarah's death, the Bennett family released balloons in her memory, each one carrying a message. Tyler's message read, "Mom, I kept my promise, just not the way I thought I would. I took care of our family by learning that we take care of each other. I love you always." The story of Tyler's promise became a touchstone in conversations about grief, about the burdens we place on children, about the difference between honoring someone's memory and being imprisoned by it. Therapists used the clip in their work with grieving families. Schools showed it to counselors to help them identify students who might be carrying too much responsibility. And countless individuals found comfort in knowing they weren't alone in their struggles. Steve Harvey never forgot that afternoon when he lost his words. In his memoir published years later, he devoted an entire chapter to Tyler and the Bennett family. "In all my years in entertainment," he wrote, "I've had many memorable moments. But the day Tyler Bennett told me about the promise he made to his dying mother, that was the day I truly understood the power of vulnerability, the importance of letting people share their burdens, and the healing that can come when we stop pretending to be okay and start being honest about our pain." He continued, "Tyler taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're not strong enough to carry everything alone. He taught me that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for others, and he taught me that keeping a promise to someone you love sometimes means reinterpreting what they really wanted, understanding the heart behind the words, rather than being bound by the literal meaning." 10 years after that episode, Tyler Bennett was a licensed therapist specializing in grief counseling. He had helped hundreds of families navigate loss, always drawing on his own experience to connect with clients who felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of holding their families together. His approach, which he called shared grief, emphasized that healing happens in community, not in isolation, and that no one person should bear the weight of everyone else's pain. In an interview marking the 10th anniversary of his Family Feud appearance, Tyler reflected on how far he had come. "That promise I made to my mother nearly destroyed me, not because it was a bad promise, but because I didn't understand what she really meant, and I was too young to know how to fulfill it in a healthy way. If I could talk to my 17-year-old self on that stage, I would tell him that it's okay to ask for help, that keeping a promise doesn't mean doing it alone, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're struggling." He added, "My mother loved me. She loved all of us, and that love is what I carry with me, not the guilt of an impossible promise. I honor her every day by living a life of compassion, by helping others who are hurting, by being present for my family, and by taking care of myself so I can be there for the people who need me." That's what she really wanted, even if the words she said in her fear and pain made it sound different. The Bennett family remained close, gathering regularly to remember Sarah and to celebrate how far they had come. Robert eventually remarried, and while it took time for the kids to adjust, they came to appreciate the love and support their stepmother brought into their lives. Emma became a nurse, inspired by the compassionate care her mother had received in hospice. Lily became a teacher, wanting to make a difference in children's lives the way her mother had. And through it all, Tyler wore his mother's locket, but now when he touched it, it wasn't a reminder of a burden he carried. It was a reminder of love, of family, of healing, and of the truth that promises made in grief can be transformed by grace. So before you click away from this powerful story, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because these stories matter. They show us that grief is not something we're meant to carry alone, that promises made in love sometimes need to be reinterpreted with wisdom, and that true strength is not about being perfect or holding everything together by yourself. Tyler Bennett showed us that vulnerability is not weakness, that asking for help is not failure, and that honoring someone's memory means living fully, not sacrificing yourself on the altar of their final wishes. His story reminds us that healing is possible even after devastating loss, that families can survive unimaginable pain if they support each other, instead of putting all the weight on one person, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply be honest about how much we're struggling. That's not just an inspiring story, that's a blueprint for how we survive the worst moments of our lives and come out the other side stronger, more connected, and more human than we were before.